so we've just spawned in the Hornet. So we don't have to make too many changes or anything. We don't have to fiddle with countermeasures and all that sort of stuff because we're just going to be doing patterns. I will set the bingo just in case we use a lot of fuel. You can do this for as long as you want. Doesn't really matter though. In fact, actually I'll set it way down here. 2000. Right, so don't have to fiddle with anything. Make sure your flaps are at half, and that's pretty much on to put the ejection seat armed. Now one thing we want to do is I do want to set TACAN. So we're going to go menu again, HSI. Let's put a HSI up here. It's the exact same display we're getting down here, only you don't get a map on this one because it doesn't have all the colours. Right, a little bit easier to read. Now we're going to set our TACAN. So you go TACAN 21, enter, and turn it on. This is the TACAN for this airfield. Like I said, I don't even think there's any other airfields in this game, in this map, that have TACAN. The airfields that do have TACAN will have different numbers, so you have to learn what that is. So this one is 21. And then we tick this is the TACAN information here. So the TACAN information is displayed in this corner, and there's a TCN next to this button. Press that, and it's put a box around it. That's put the TACAN information up in the HUD on that little display there. It's told us we are 2.6 k's from the TACAN station, and DAN is just the code, the Morse code that for this airfield. Next thing we want to do is we're going to use this switch, the CRS switch, and it's just like the heading switch, only this one's set to course. We want a course of 050, 050, enter. That's the runway heading. And I think now we're good to taxi. So I'll see as we're lining up on the runway. I'll just make sure that there's no one coming across this taxiway. Lining up on runway 05. Now our trim is at 12. We're not going to touch it. Flaps are half. That's good. We are good to go. We have no weapons or anything on our wings. We're nice and light. All we're carrying is full tank of fuel. Follow the yellow line round and line up on the centre line for runway 05. Now if you have a throttle with a afterburner detent, I recommend you set that if you can. That will allow you to use full throttle but no afterburner really easily. If you can't do that, you just have to get used to setting that throttle position. Now, on our HUD, we have an arrow. This is our course line. This is the same information as we're seeing with this long vertical line on our HSI. We're going to use this information on our pattern. We're also seeing how far we are away from the TACAN station. Not sure exactly where the TACAN station is at this track, at this airfield. It's it could be anywhere, don't know. But that's the information we have anyways, right? So we've got our course line, and that's our course line there. So I'm going to go full throttle. Waiting for airspeed to come alive. It's at 48 right now. 51, it's come alive. 100 knots. 130, slight pull back on the stick. Nose is coming up. gear up, flaps up, velocity vector up to 10 degrees, and keep the airspeed down to 250 knots. We're just doing patterns, we don't need to go really fast. And we're looking for 1600 feet barometric. So 14, start pitching down. 16, pitch down level. Just gone over it a little bit, we'll have to work on that. And throttle back so we don't accelerate too hard. And we're flying. So, in the HUD we got these little ticks, little triangle here, and you got tick marks. That's 0, 5 degrees, 15 degrees, 30 degrees, and there's one for 60 degrees. We're going to turn to 30 degrees. Hold our velocity vector on the horizon and maintain 250 knots, 30 degrees bank, and velocity vector on the horizon. And what we're going to do, you're going to see how that arrow is falling away and there's two dots. They represent how far off the course we are. Doesn't matter about that, but the point is, as you see that going around, when it gets directly below the velocity vector, we'll be 90 degrees away from the heading course. So there you go, we're heading 90 degrees away from the actual desired course to land. Keep bringing it around, keep maintaining that altitude. A little slow, a little slow just means our corner will be tighter, a little fast means our corner will be wider. So try to maintain that 250 knots. And you can see that. Now when the lines and that on the HUD line up with the wings on the velocity vector, that's when we want to line up. You can also look at the HSI, and you want that course line to be vertical. So lining up, and slow it down a bit. Now you're not supposed to put your gear down below until you're below 250 knots, so we're pretty fast to be putting our gear down, so we'll just wait. On that idle, just maintaining pitch, maintaining the horizon line with pitch on the velocity vector, and rolling to maintain that course line so it's vertical, so we don't go closing in on it too much. Put our gear down. When the light turns off, the gear is down and locked. Gear is down and locked. And because we're going to do a pattern where we're going to do a touch and go and come back around, we're going to put our flaps down to half, not to full. Keep the velocity vector on the line and pitch for the E-bracket and trim for the E-bracket. It's popped up a bit of throttle to keep the velocity vector on the line. Trim nose down while adding throttle, and we'll keep that E-bracket. There we go. Now just maintain the velocity vector on the line. Move it a little closer to the runway there, that's not so good. That line in the HSI vertical again. We can look across. Runway's behind us a little bit. Now what we're looking to do is we want the runway to be at 45 degrees behind us. Roughly, that is, if I look out, I see the wingtip, I want that to line up with the threshold of the runway. Because we're doing a touch and go, it doesn't matter too much. We won't need a lot of runway at all for this little exercise. But just good practice for when landing, because we're going to want to use as much of that runway as possible. Maintaining our altitude by keeping that velocity vector on the line. Rolling to keep the course line vertical. Looking out to see where we are. I'm going to say that's us. So now we're going to turn to 15 degrees. I'm going to keep that velocity vector, if you look here, just shy of the the horizon, so we're slightly descending, just ever so slightly. I'm not using the pitch of the stick, I'm just using the roll of the stick and controlling the velocity vector with throttle, which doesn't stop moving. Little corrections, little. First you might be putting big corrections in, but you've just got to train yourself to be using little corrections. Takes a bit of time, but eventually it becomes second nature. Okay, we're at the 90. Keep coming around. See how we're lining up for the runway. Yeah, probably coming around a little too quickly. It's okay, we'll just keep it coming, correct later. Yeah, holding that velocity vector just slightly lower the horizon. Holding 15 degrees. Lining up. Yeah, it's not looking too bad. Okay, now that it's in the front of us, I'm going to start lowering our velocity vector down quite a bit. This is roughly where I want it when we land, but I think we may have to go a little lower. And we're just correcting for our lineup of the runway, using our throttle to control where our velocity vector is. And where the velocity vector is, that is where you're gonna be. So you just put it exactly where you want it, roll level, and this looks really good. Just try to get it back over in center. I like this is really good. So now we're approaching the runway. Just little roll corrections just to move the velocity vector left or right. Throttle corrections to move the velocity vector up or down. Keep coming on in. Now we don't have to flare in the F-18, it's got really strong suspension. You can if you want, but you don't have to. You just fly it all the way in, till you touch down. Touchdown. Now I'm going to full mil. Gear up, flaps up. Hold 10 degrees. And hold 250 knots. So throttles back a bit and just maintain this. Okay, we're looking for 1600 feet, 1300, 1400, 1500, start leveling out, 1600. And a little bit fast, throttle back, and that's that. Now we'll do again a 30 degree roll, maintain altitude, try to get that speed down to 250 knots. We maintain altitude with our stick. Sorry, we maintain our velocity vector on the horizon line with our stick. A little bit of pitch fore and aft. Our roll rate with our stick, and we keep the velocity vector. We're maintaining our airspeed with our throttle. I like to keep it at 250 knots. Let's keep bringing it around. Watching that course line until it's at the 90 roughly soon. Yeah, we're at the 90. Keep bringing around. Keep the horizon line. Keep the airspeed. Check everything. Just scan your instruments. 253 knots. We're on just above the horizon line. Bring it down a bit. Not quite at 30. 248 knots on the horizon line. Not quite at the 30. At the speed on the horizon line. Not quite at the 30. And the course line is vertical. Level out. Roll out to the other side just to correct the course line. 250 knots, we can put our gear out. Gear is out. Now we're going to be landing on this one and coming to a complete stop. So as our speed drifts down, just let it drift down and keep pulling the stick a little bit here just to maintain the velocity vector on the horizon line. We're below 200 knots. Okay, half flaps. And trim the velocity vector into the E bracket. Got to hold the stick down. As our speed drops, our lift will drop, so the velocity vector will fall. And then we've got to get it corrected. There we go, we're good now. Using throttle now to control where the velocity vector is. Now that we've trimmed to the E bracket, we don't want to move the stick forward and aft, we just want to use our velocity vector. Okay, looking out to the runways over there. Now we'll go full flaps. Again, the plane will want to rise. Just hold it down. Use throttle to maintain the velocity vector. Let it stabilise. Cool, there we go, we're stabilised. We're going slower now. The downwind will take a bit longer. Course line is awful. Correct that. Just got to keep watching all these things. If you lose track of something, you just got to correct. Okay, hold on this. Check out the window. Nearly there. Window. This will do. Okay, roll at 15 degrees. Velocity vector slightly low. Use throttle to hold it. Now we've got a lot of fuel on board, so stopping wise, the Hornet doesn't like stopping when it's heavy, and 9,000 pounds of fuel is quite a lot. So currently we're at like 140 knots, but if we were down at 2,000 pounds of fuel, we'd be just barely over 120 knots. Now we're at the 90, keep holding, keep holding. That's over there. Yeah, we're a little not lined up for it, so we'll just level out a bit. Kinda have to go by feel. Okay, 15 degrees. Every correction should be quite small, don't be violent. Holding it, velocity vector up on the horizon line until I get the runway in front of me. There's the runway, bring it down. Again, we've turned too early, so I'm just going to start straightening it up just a little bit more now, just to help get us on track. Keep your eyes on the thing. And also I'm bringing the velocity vector down to where I want it to be for landing, so we are descending. Turning to line up. As you turn, you need a little bit more power because you're using some of your lift to turn the plane, so you have less lift holding you up, so you need more power to go a little faster to create more lift. And there we go. And as you straighten up, you take that power back out. A little bit of throttle. And we don't want to land too far down, but you don't want to try to make the threshold either. That's a good way to crash. So just in the touchdown area, bit of throttle. Just constantly moving. Constantly moving. Keep the throttle on until you touch the ground. Throttle to idle, air brake out, air brake's coming up there. Use your rudders to maintain the centre line. And gently brake. No rush, don't have to stand on the brakes if you don't want to. Just gently brake. Maintain that centre line. Make a left exit. We'll make a left exit here at Delta, so I'm off the brakes. Air brake down, flaps up. And taxiing off the runway. Runway clear. Okay, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Hopefully this makes some sense to you, and just fly the patterns like I have here, just do it over and over again. Try to be as close to the perfect as you can be. Obviously I wasn't close to perfect, but just be as close to it as you can be and sort of figure it out for yourself, and ask questions when you need to. Ask the other guys too. Right, hopefully that helped. See ya.